Hey, folks, we are still at ng-conf. I'm talking to Mike Ryan. Mike, do you want to say hi?
Hello, everyone.
Now, have we met in person before?
I don't think we've met in person before, but I've been on a couple of your podcasts now at this point.
Yeah, you've been on a couple of the podcasts. We did My Angular Story, which is why I recognized your face because we had the video on. And you walked in and I was like, I know that guy, but anyway.
Yep. And we've done Adventures in Angular at least one time about NGRX. So.
Yep, absolutely. So, busy ng-conf for you, huh?
So busy. We've had 4 talks to prepare this year. Yes.
That's a lot.
I don't know how they convinced us to do it, but it's been fun and exciting. However, I don't think we're doing 4 next time.
They have like a spa in this hotel because, man, they should hook you up.
Right? I know. No free spa tickets. Just a thank you and some taffy.
Oh, there you go. Well, at least you got taffy, right?
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, were all of the talks focused around NGRX?
Yes. So this year they had an actual full NGRX track at ng-conf.
Oh, wow.
And so I think that was around 10 talks just about NGRX, and we supplied 4 of them.
Oh, wow. Who's we?
That is going to be Brandon Roberts and I. We are the 2 core maintainers of NGRX.
Okay. Sounds good. So, yeah. Yeah, and Brandon spoke yesterday too, didn't he?
That's right. I should clarify. Of the 4, 3 were today, and then 1 was yesterday about authentication.
Right.
Yeah. But we prepare all the slides together. It's the same template, and we practice together, so it's been a group effort for all 4 of the talks.
Yep. Do you work together with Brandon?
I do. We both work at a company called Synapse Wireless.
Right.
And we do the industrial and Internet of Things controls.
Gotcha. Well, that's cool. At least you didn't have to give all 4 talks, I guess.
That's right. So we did 2 of them together and 2 solo.
Okay.
So that kind of helped balance things out a little bit, give us each some breathing room.
So what were the talks on specifically? I know he did one on authentication. I saw that one yesterday.
And then today, the 3 talks we started off this morning with reactive testing strategies. So we sort of went through, how do you actually test an NGRX application? How do you unit test selectors and reducers and effects? And that was a great talk because we gotta kind of shine a light on one of the big benefits of NGRX is, which is that it should make your application a little easier to test.
Right.
We followed that one up with good action hygiene, which was more of a theoretical talk about the process of writing good actions and sort of being empathetic for other developers on your team. And then we ended up the day with reducing the boilerplate, which was a talk a lot of people were excited to hear. Boilerplate's a big problem with NGRX, and so it was fun to go on stage, and we sort of had a good time about addressing the boilerplate problem.
Right. So let's start there then. How do you address the boilerplate problem?
Well, the first thing we wanted to do was sort of set the record straight on what boilerplate is, because it's this term that gets thrown around about a lot of different aspects of NGRX. But to us, boilerplate's some piece of code that's repeated a lot in your application. And from our perspective, actions and reducers, while they are similar in structure, they're very unique to the state you're managing or the events you're capturing. And so to us, that's not boilerplate, despite people calling it boilerplate. We admit that it's explicitness and that it's a lot to write, but that's sort of that's doing so is what gives you some of the benefits that NGRX describes. So we set the record straight on boilerplate, and then we talked about, okay, what actually is the boilerplate, and how can I handle it?
Right.
So it was a lot of fun.
Cool. Very cool. Do you want to give kind of the highlights of the other talks?
Sure. So with good action hygiene, we really see that there's 3 pitfalls when you're writing an action. And that is, you should not reuse actions.
Right.
Actions should try and capture unique events in your application. You should not do what's called action subtyping, and that's where you're trying to write a generic action and then use it for a lot of different interactions. So for instance, you have your API might respond an error, and so you just write a generic API error action, and then you kind of put a kind property on it, say, oh, this is it's this kind of error or that kind of error. And so that subtyping thing, we recommend just go ahead and write a unique action for each of those.
Right.
And then the third pitfall is not giving your actions descriptive enough names. That kind of ties into that empathy that I was talking about earlier, where you want to write an application that's maintainable beyond just you. You want to give a lot of thought as to how other developers are going to read and maintain the code that you're writing.
Right.
So it was a great talk to talk about, the process of writing sustainable applications. And then the other talk, reactive testing strategies, we talked a lot about a really cool test framework called Jest.
Uh-huh.
And Jest is really big in the React community. It doesn't have a whole lot of traction in the Angular community yet, but that's something we're trying to change.
Yep.
And some of its benefits are that it's really fast to run your test in it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't use a real browser. It emulates a browser environment. That also makes it easier to debug your tests.
Right.
And then it gives you this tool called snapshotting.
Mm-hmm.
And snapshotting is basically automating the process of creating assertions.
Right.
And it really works well for applications that are built with like functional purity in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happens that in NGRX, we really promote functional purity in a lot of aspects of the application. So snapshot testing makes testing an Angular application within NGRX a lot simpler.
That makes sense. Yeah, I have a React podcast now as well, and Jest comes up, and it looks really, really nice.
Yeah, I've not seen a developer use it and go back. So we're really trying to, recommend that developers look kind of into this sister community that is the React community, and let's take what they've learned and what they've developed that's so great and kind of share some of that over in the Angular ecosystem. Yep,
absolutely. So we've talked a bit about where NGRX came from, both on Adventures in Angular and on my Angular story. I'm kind of curious, and this is something I'm trying to do with these interviews, is just give people a chance to get to know the speakers sort of on a more personal level, so that when you watch the talk, it's like, oh yeah, he's the guy that, and has this in common with me and things like that. So do you want to just talk a little bit about who you are on a little bit more personal level, just like, where you're from, what you like to do, that kind of thing?
Sure. So I live in a city called Huntsville, Alabama, and I like to call it the best kept secret about Alabama. So in Huntsville, there are two important institutions that really help define the city. The first is NASA. It's the birthplace of the Saturn V rocket that took us to the moon. And then we also have Redstone Arsenal, which brings with it a large Army and FBI presence.
Okay.
And so those three things together means that Huntsville is really a big engineering city. I think it has like the most PhDs per capita.
Oh,
and
wow.
Like everyone you meet in Huntsville is an engineer. So that's the place where I live. I moved to Huntsville to pursue a career as an engineer. And in my free time, when I'm not building NGRX and Angular applications, I really love tabletop gaming and woodworking. So I find that both are a really good way to sort of let my mind rest and to focus on either being with people in the case of board games or to kind of get my hands on something when it comes to woodworking.
Right. I get the same kind of thing out of working on my cars. So,
I bet it's very similar.
Yep. So what's the latest thing that you've built or been building?
So I have been building a dining room table and benches. We just bought, me and my partner Kenna, we just bought a house about 10 months ago, and it had a very oddly shaped dining room.
Oh, okay.
And so we had to either find a table that could fit the space, or in our case, we just decided to go ahead and build one ourselves. And so that's actually been a couple of months process. We made a bit of a mistake and used pressure-treated lumber for one part of the table, so we sort of had to let it dry before we could finish staining it. But that's been a couple of month process for us, so that's been a lot of fun.
That does sound like fun. I'm working up my woodworking tools collection, but the auto work for me kind of came out of necessity, right? I didn't want to pay somebody else to do it, so
Well, one of the nice parts about all those engineers in Huntsville is there's a lot of people who like to make things,
right?
And so there are these makers organizations that are basically like shared tools co-ops. So I don't own any woodworking tools myself.
Oh, right.
I can just participate in a makers local group and use their tools and sort of join a community like that, and that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know there are a couple of maker spaces in downtown Salt Lake. There really aren't that many close to me.
That sucks.
And I don't live that far from Salt Lake, but it's just far enough to where I can't just pop over there and go work. So maybe I'll set up a Kickstarter or something, see if I can get something together.
There you go. Yeah, and what's fun about them is it's not actually terribly difficult to make them sustainable.
Right.
If you've got members and you charge a membership, you can sort of keep tools coming in and keep them upkept, and so it's been a lot of fun. Yeah,
we would just need a basic set of kind of the main things that you'd need, and
table saw, router, things like that.
Yep, absolutely. And then I think it'd be fun to have like a 3D printer and a few other things like that in there, and then just pull something together.
So, those are my hobbies. It's one of my goals in life to own a Tesla, speaking of cars. So I like to pretend that all of my life decisions are in the pursuit of owning a Tesla one day. For instance, when we bought the house, I didn't call it the house. I called it the Tesla charging station.
Nice.
So one day that'll be filled in, and I can get really worked up and talk about that for a long time. And then travel. Ken and I really like to travel a lot. So
Nice. So with the travel, did she come out here with you, or?
She did not. She is at home with her family this week in Dothan, Alabama, home of the Peanut Festival. To give you a sense of that kind of
Peanut Festival. Sweet. I have no idea if that's a big thing or not.
It's a big thing if you live in Dothan.
Okay.
So nope, she didn't come out with me this time, but yeah, that's something that we really enjoy doing.
Very cool. So yeah, do you want to just give us an idea of what's coming next in NGRX?
Sure. So we have 2 major releases planned. The first one is NGRX 6, and that's just us aligning our version number with Angular and supporting the latest RxJS 6. So there's not a lot of big surprises there. We know that there's going to be a lot of things that you have to upgrade, and so we want to make the NGRX process as smooth as possible, so no big breaking changes. The one that we're really excited about, and this will be in the fall, is NGRX 7.
Okay.
At the keynote yesterday, the Angular keynote, Brad Green announced that NGRX is growing. John Papa and Ward Bell are joining the team, which has been a really fun narrative all on its own.
Yeah.
It was just a year ago that Ward Bell was on your podcast lamenting NGRX. And 1 year later,
lamenting, yeah, that's a nice word for
it. Being combative, maybe,
yeah,
is a more descriptive way of saying it. So we're really excited about them joining the team and leveraging all of their years of experience building data-driven applications. So that's going to be really the big highlight of NGRX 7 is folding in some of the work that they've been doing into the project and taking some of the things that they've learned and that we've learned and sort of improving just the core framework of it.
Very cool. Well, if people want to see what's coming out next or they want to follow along with this stuff, where do they go?
So we don't have an NGRX Twitter account yet, but if you want to follow along, the best place is you can go ahead and follow me on Twitter. I'm at Mike Ryan Dev. I tweet about nothing other than NGRX, so you won't be disappointed if you're coming for NGRX tweets. Additionally, you can find us on Medium. I'm, again, Mike Ryan Dev on Medium, and then Mike Ryan Dev on GitHub as well. So nice and consistent.
Very cool. All right, well, thanks for all your work on NGRX, and thanks for coming by and stopping and talking to us for a few minutes.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you.